Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. It's another episode of the Offseason Roster Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at the defensive tackle room. I am your host, Jackson McCurry, and joining me is none other than Jack Duffin. Jack, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's probably the most depressing room on the roster. It certainly was, having had to spend a whole year watching them last year. But hey, we're doing all the rooms and leaving no stone unturned.
Yeah, the defensive tackle room is a fascinating one because last year, and it's so funny because now Browns fans have revisionist history because I don't recall anybody being mad that we let Ogunjobi walk in free agency. I don't recall anybody being mad when we cut Sheldon Richardson.
Ooh, and there was a lot of people mad at that one.
And there was, okay, I take that back. There was some that were mad. That the Browns did try to bring him back at a cheaper deal. He chose to go to Minnesota. But then after the Malik Mcdowell incident a couple weeks ago, everybody's like, well, we should have kept Ogunjobi, who people don't want to admit this. He benefited from having Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson on that defensive front.
And BJ Hill.
And DJ Reader? BJ Hill, I forget who else was on that.
There's a lot of nice talent there.
Yeah, and then Sheldon Richardson had a okay year, but he's trending downward in his career. But Jack, when you look at this defensive tackle room, we tried to patch it together with a couple draft picks, a couple young players, and a couple free agent signings. But the defensive tackle room does not look too promising going forward into the Browns' future.
It's a bit like the edge room where there's one decent player and nothing else. Obviously, I'm not going to say this player is in the same ballpark as Myles Garrett, but I am talking about there is one dude and there is a whole pile of disaster, and that was Sheldon Day. And to be fair, most games he didn't play across the whole season if you look at it. So we're not talking about any superstar by any means, but certainly the second half of the season he played a lot more, and he actually put up a good performance. So he is the one guy that I could see being back and potentially starting. Everyone else is not good at all. It was pretty much an unmitigated disaster everywhere you looked. The Maliks, you had Togai was bad. I had him on the bubble last year, and people were telling me there's no way he's on the bubble with Jordan Elliott. Was not good again. It was really, really, really bad. No other way to really talk about it. It sucked big time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Malik McDowell showed some flashes, and he was probably going to come back until his incident a few weeks ago. Now, I don't see any scenario where the Browns bring him back. Malik Jackson, he was a cheap free agent signing, just did not perform the way we thought he was going to. Jordan Elliott hasn't made a jump yet, which is disappointing because a lot of us were high on him when we got him in the third round. And then Togai, I think we all seen in the preseason he was going to be a project. He was inactive like the first half of the year, and then the second half he played, but didn't show much to warrant, having hopes for going forward. Which, Jack, on a side note, you got to watch what you say about Ohio State players to Browns fans because they don't take too kindly to Ohio State slander around here.
Hey, I'll say whatever I want. They can argue with me. If someone's not playing well, I'll tell them. Malik McDowell actually kicked off the season. I think it was the first 2 or 3 games actually really well.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow, we haven't really uncovered something here. And he would have been coming back to fight for a spot in camp. He wasn't a lock to make the roster by any means next year. And lots of people were hoping, hey, second year breakout, his body's going to be more ready for a season, having not played for a while. And now we're sitting here going, he's probably not on the roster. The fact that he hasn't been cut yet gives me belief that either they're waiting for more information or something happened around it, because I was expecting it to be a pretty sudden move, which never happened. So it's one that I feel better about his chance of making the roster now than I did about a month ago when it happened, because I expected a cut to be announced any day, and I've not seen anything as of yet.
Well, he's an exclusive rights free agent, correct?
I suppose so, yeah.
So he would have to sign a contract.
Yeah, they'd have to offer him a tender. So yeah, I guess that's the reason why we haven't seen anything.
So I would think like the Browns are probably just not, unless, information comes out, something. I mean, barring something unforeseen that we're not seeing, because if anybody hasn't seen that police cam footage,
I've not seen it yet.
It's quite disturbing. It's on TMZ, Jack, if you want to go check it out. I don't see him coming back. I could see the Browns offering him some help, which hopefully he's taking it if he hasn't already. He comes back, maybe. I can't see it because the media is just gonna like lash out at the organization for doing that. But yeah, I just don't see Malik McDowell returning, barring something for unforeseen, like I said. So when you look at this defensive tackle room, right now, Togiai and Elliott are here. They're definitely not locks. But Jack, when you look at this group, and how do you address this position going forward? Because draft people can say, oh, well, there's defensive tackles in the draft. Andrew Berry has shown so far that he's not very keen on finding defensive tackles. Now, granted, these guys are mid-round picks. If he finds one in the first round, I would kind of want to trust them. But how do you fix this room going forward, Jack?
Yeah, and I think Clowney is a big factor on what happens with this room, because they spent more on Clowney's $8 million than they did, especially once you take Andrew Billings out of the equation, they did on the rest of the players in there last season. And that is a massive factor. If you're going to spend big on your second edge, that money's coming out of the defensive tackle room, most likely. So when people are going, bring back Clowney, and then they start talking about the defensive tackle room and they're like, oh yeah, we'll have these two $8 million players. It's like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. It's like you can have Clowney or you can have the two $8 million players. And that's when you come into those conversations. If you're sat in there offering me like Clowney and Sheldon Day, that is 16 million worth of player, or you're talking about Melvin Ingram plus Calais Campbell, Akeem Hicks, someone like that. Well, I'm taking the two really good players rather than Clowney there. And those sort of things are a real factor. And let's not forget, Sheldon Day's a free agent. He is not under contract next year. So I think they'll make a move to bring back Sheldon Day. He's the only one that's capable of starting. I don't think they'll want him to start, but I think they're happy with him being part of the rotation. So you're looking towards the free agent names. And they're almost in two groups. Let's take they're all about 8 million. But any of these guys, who sort of takes your fancy most? Akeem Hicks, Calais Campbell, Folorenzo Fatakusi, butchered his name, I apologize. BJ Hill, DJ Jones, Linval Joseph, Sebastian Joseph Day, Malik Collins. Anyone jump off the page here?
Akeem Hicks. Obviously he's the top guy. He's 32 though, and he's a Drew Rosenhaus client, so there's kind of things that might scare the Browns away. Calais Campbell, but he's another aging vet. Obviously, he'll be 36 probably by the time the season starts. Other than that, none of these names really jump out to me. BJ Hill probably be a guy. He's in that range, 26 years old. Get him at about $9 million a year wouldn't be a bad thing, and if you could pluck him away from the Cincinnati Bengals, it wouldn't be a bad thing either.
Yeah, no, if I was going to spend some money, then he's probably the one that stands out to me the most.
DJ Jones, perhaps too. 27, he's right in that age range.
Yeah. DJ Jones, they're probably the two.
Yeah.
BJ Hill, DJ Jones. If I'm going to go spend some decent money, there's a cheaper dude that I'm going to come on to next, and a guy I was banging the table for us to draft and we didn't. But yeah, if they're going to put some money on the table, those I would say are your two most likely names. They're predicting the same contract here at PFF. We're talking 3 years, 8.75 million a year. So you guarantee the first two, and the third year is a team option. But yeah, that is the pairing you go after. And quite frankly, if we got either of them, I'm going to be really happy. We've seen more consistency out of BJ Hill and he's younger. So that would be where my mind instantly goes. And who knows where the Bengals are going to go. I'm going to throw out the next name. And this is a guy that I really, really, really liked at draft time. He's come on and played really, really well in the last season. 26 years old, and that's Harrison Phillips out of Buffalo. I really wanted the Browns to draft him. It didn't happen. But that for me is a guy, I don't know how much he's going to be, probably sort of 5 to 7.5 maybe, but sign him up for a couple of years. And that I think is a really, really nice piece you can build around.
Yeah, and then you also mentioned in your article Tim Settle, who's only going to be 25 in July, 5th round pick back in 2018 for the Washington Commanders, the new name of the football team out there in Washington. He's been consistent in a limited role for the Commanders the last 3 seasons. Could be a guy that the Browns could get cheap. He's still only 20. He'll be 25 in July, so that's right in the age range of what this team likes to get guys. And a guy entering his second contract, only 25 years old, like there's a chance he can get a third contract down the line too if he performs well. So that could be another name in free agency to look out for as well.
Well, that's my dream scenario. I think we go and get Harrison Phillips and ask him to be our best defensive tackle. Then we bring in Tim Settle behind him. Give them both 3 deals to take it, or take 3-year deals. To offer you a little bit of security there. Then bring back Sheldon Day on a nice cheap deal. And I think that gives you really, really solid sort of top 3. All free agents. Harrison Phillips is probably the one demanding some money, but the rest are really reasonable. And let's not forget that there's a lot of talent on that Washington D-line. So that could be a reason why he's got less snaps. And as you said, he's performed well when he's got opportunities. We're not going to ask him to come here and be the dominant one if we ended up with that triple rotation. And quite frankly, day 3 pick, if they like somebody, or a UDFA, because a UDFA can make the roster with the last couple of Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott, they could both be cut. I think it'd be harsh to cut Tommy Togiai after 1 year. But if you have that sort of rotation of Phillips, Settle, and Day, you can have a lot more time for a Togiai and say, hey, let's see what you can do. But yeah, I struggle to see them both making the roster. If they both make the roster, then we are going to be in a really weak position, because you're asking your defensive tackle 3 and 4 to play. It's not like a quarterback where the backup doesn't play. It's not even like a linebacker and a corner where they don't get that many snaps. You are getting a decent sort of 20% plus as a 3 and 4. So they can't rely on those guys.
No, unless they come back in April or May when OTAs start and they just, they impress and they show that they've made strides. They've showed that they've worked on stuff. I'm willing to give Togiai a little bit more time. It just seemed like he needed to adapt to the NFL style rather than the Big Ten style of playing a defensive tackle the way he did at Ohio State. Elliott, I don't understand because he looked so good at Missouri. We got him in the 3rd round when PFF was grading him as a 1st round talent, but the guy just hasn't seemed to be able to get it yet. Kind of hoping this year's the year the light bulb comes on. But like you said, both of these guys are definitely not locks for the roster heading into 2022.
Yeah, and they're not going to sit there and go, hey, we took this guy in the 4th round, we'll keep up a spot open for him. Yeah, I think if you're talking about the 1st, 2nd, there's some amazing raw talent that you could do that. And if we were sat there with like 1 and 2 were locks, and we had a Miles and we had a who's sort of a good example, a Newsome sort of level, if it's sort of quality at the defensive tackle room, you could almost, it'd be semi-painful, but you could have that sort of developmental space behind them. But there's nothing, so you're going to need them to step up. And I think a couple of cheaper dudes like Phillips and Settle just leaves you with a really, really nice rotation. And it might be a case they end up going BJ Hill or Jones and then Settle alongside them. Because you start factoring in who's going to play the 1, the 3 tech and everything like that, then it can get a bit more messy. But yeah, I think you're looking at one or the other. And if they took someone in the 5th, I would say they've got just as good chance of making the roster, if not slightly better than Elliott and Togyo. It's that grim.
Yeah, and like outside of Jordan Davis from Georgia, I think there's a kid from A&M. The D tackle class doesn't look very promising from what Alex Hale has said to me. So yeah, like I don't know what to expect out of this defensive tackle room going forward.
Change.
A
That's
lot of
what you
change.
should expect.
Yeah, definitely a lot of change, but we'll see. If the last time they invested money in this room, it was Dorsey when he paid big bucks for Sheldon Richardson. Could Barry do it? Very much so. There's some guys that fit the criteria what this front office likes in terms of the guardrails. So we'll see what happens with this room in free agency. Like you said at the top, I think it depends on what happens with Clowney, because if Clowney comes back, it means the Browns invested some money in him, which means they probably won't invest as much in the D tackle room. So definitely going to be something to watch. And if you guys missed it, go back and listen to the Edge Defender episode we dropped on Monday, as well as the article. Jack, as we wrap things up, plug everything you got going on, and we'll get on out of here.
Yeah, so we'll be back next week with linebackers and then corners. So some really juicy stuff there, and the corner room might be the only room in the NFL I'll predict something crazy for. So make sure you come back for that one. No, I think it's going to be interesting. Your wide receivers is the big focus on the offensive side, and your D line is where the juicy stuff's going to happen on the defensive side. So yeah, lots of people are going to keep looking at quarterback, and who knows what's going to happen. It could be anything. But if you're looking at overall room and what's going to change the most, wide receiver and D-line is where your focus should be, and where the front office's focus will be. So, no, follow me on Twitter. It's at Jack Duffin, DUFFIN. Shoot me any questions. Feedback's great. Keep it coming. But no, we're getting near. We've got 4 more shows left.
Yes, we do. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08, the Dogland at the Dogland. We should be back. I think me and Anthony should be back later sometime at the end of the week to drop a Super Bowl preview. Jack, real quick, Bengals or Rams?
I am deep on my Cincy Bengals. They have made me a healthy amount of money on the playoffs, beating the Titans, covering +7 against KC, and we're going to do it again.
All right. I don't know who I'm picking yet. If I have to pick right now, I'll say the Bengals win in a close one. I think if it's a close game, get me the Bengals just because of what they've done down the stretch. And if it comes down to a kick, outside of Justin Tucker, you can't go wrong with Evan McPherson at this point. That dude is so clutch, and he's only a rookie. So
is he the heir? Is he the heir to Justin Tucker?
He very may well be. It's unfortunate. Wait till the special teams episode, because we might just cry that we don't have a kicker while the rest of the division has one.
More 4th downs.
More aggressiveness for Jack Duffin. That's what we want to see. But until next time, Browns fans, as always, as we get on out of here, go Browns.
Go Browns.